All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much for agreeing for this interview today. I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So I saw on your website that I was looking at that you were nominated Scottish Album of the Year in 2014, 17, and 18, which is huge, and BBC Two Radio 2 Folk Award nominations. Plus, you've had a whole bunch of others. That's just fantastic.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think there's different kind of levels of success at different times in your life. So when I was in my early 20s, I did a lot of touring all over the world. And I guess I had a more conventional version of success for a time where I was sort of like, playing on the TV, playing on the radio, doing a lot of high profile support slots and things like that. And then my daughter was born, 6 years ago. She's six now. And from that time, my whole lens on success changed because I could see guys around me who maybe had kids and were still touring and still kind of like living that life. And suddenly the lens on what success meant changed because I knew as an artist, as a songwriter, that I'd always want to write songs and perform them and share them and use songs as a kind of vehicle to
Hmm.
connect with other people.
Yep.
But I also knew that I wanted my boots at the door with Rosa, and I wanted to be there. And everyone says you don't get that time back. They're only
That's right.
we one time. So
Mhm.
I started to focus more on the kind of online side of things across, I guess, since COVID. Obviously COVID sort of stopped touring in its tracks. And so that was a big identity shift. But I guess since then, it's been more focused online. I still do a lot of gigs in Scotland, but the sort of gigs that I like to do now are community based things like village halls, small churches. I
Mhm.
love taking music to places where they don't maybe normally have a ton of music. And
Mhm.
often in the cities, we're really spoiled for choice. I'm sure
Mhm.
over where you are, it's the same, right? But then
Yeah.
in these rural places, how do we get more music into those places? And on a selfish level, I love the adventure of it and going to
Mhm.
these wee places and meeting these interesting people. And so, mainly what I do these days is I do gigs like that. I've got a Patreon, an online thing, and I've got my social media channels, and I coach other songwriters on things like social media and things like finishing songs. Because as you'll know, it's hard, right?
Mhm.
Finishing songs is hard, and so I enjoy helping folk with that. So my life these days is more at this phase that you find me in, I guess, is more kind of wholesome than it
Mhm.
used to be, you know.
Yeah. So my first question is what are your early musical influences? Now, yours would be a lot different than mine because you're born and raised in Scotland and I'm born and raised in Canada, but so who did you listen to when you were very young?
Well, my mum was a child of the 60s folk revival. So, it was like all of that good kind of like protest music. And my mum actually was an activist, and then my dad was a cabinet maker, and he was way more on the state side. So he was way more your Bob Dylan and Jackson C. Frank and Simon and Garfunkel. And I remember as a little kid, all those records kind of drifting into my consciousness. Um, so I guess there was two elements to the kind of introduction that I had to music, and one was my mum taking me to all these pubs
Hmm.
and bars as a kid, and I would listen to the folk singers, and those songs are really old. They're maybe some of them could be 1,000 years old, and then there
Yeah.
was like my dad with a kind of album. Now, the thing I think's dead interesting about the songwriter as a kind of concept is it's quite a new concept because for the songwriter to exist, you need to have recorded music. So historically, you might have had like a poet or a bard or a troubadour, right? and that would be close to a songwriter, but a songwriter has to have a recording to
Mm,
kind of exist. So I guess I got the archetype of songwriter from my dad, but a lot of influence from all sorts of places. But I always found the concept and the archetype of a songwriter to be kind of interesting.
hmm. Yeah. Did you listen to much music from North America when you were growing up? Like you said, your father did, like Simon and Garfunkel and that kind of stuff. But as a young man, like maybe
Mm,
entering your teens, like I know Scotland has put out some amazing music over the years. And you know what? I'm really embarrassed to say I only found out like this year that Nazareth was from outside of
no
Edinburgh.
way.
I had no
Okay.
idea. I just knew
Yeah.
they were this amazing rock band that I loved, and I still have a CD of theirs. And
Right.
when I Googled them, I said, holy crap, they're from outside of Edinburgh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Scotland's an interesting place in terms of like it's quite dense, in
Mhm.
terms of like creativity and art and music. And I think a big reason behind that is if someone dies, there's music. If someone is married, there's music.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
it's an end of year ceremony, there's a Ceilidh band. It's part of the kind of culture. That said, yeah, I did listen to a lot of American stuff, and I was fascinated by American stuff because as a teenager, it was sort of like a movie to us in Scotland. It was like, I'm sure in Canada it was the same to some extent. This idea of like places like New York and
Yeah.
LA and like the sort of scenes, and you had
Hmm.
these images of what that meant. And I suppose when I was growing up, when you were growing up too, but my generation would be the last one that there would be the mystery of an artist. You could have in my case, a CD, and yours a vinyl,
Yeah.
where you'd have this relationship just to the music, right?
Yeah.
Where now I think it's so different because the concept of the mysterious artist, mysterious songwriter is a little bit. I just don't know if we'll see that again. I don't
Mm.
know. What do you think?
Everything's online these days, and that's the thing. Like people going to venues has really, like you said, since COVID has really decreased. I know where I was living, like I live in Quebec, but Ontario is like 20 minutes to
Right.
drive to the other way, right? Like I moved over here because it's a hell of a lot less expensive here.
Okay.
I had to learn language, but other than that, um, but every Sunday night I used to go to this songwriting session, and it was at a pub. So I go, have my meal, have a beer, watch people perform original music that they wrote. And they were only performing for their supper, really. They were getting
Yeah.
fed and they were getting, as much beer as they wanted while they were performing. But COVID shut all that stuff down. And the only thing that I see around here now is we have a Kaylee in the hall every Friday night, just up the highway. Um,
Amazing.
People get together and you have every instrument there. Fiddling's huge here in the Ottawa Valley where I live. It's because when we were settled by the Scottish and the Irish, it was the logging. So they had their logging camps. So there was nothing to do in the logging camp, so they'd break out the fiddles and they'd step dance.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
huge here. It's still huge here. You got little kids. I worked for 11 years at a step dance and fiddle competition that ran every long weekend in September. And there was little kids that might be 3 or 4 there, all the way up to 65. And it was
God.
spectacular. And it's all the jigs and reels that I'm sure you know because they're all
Yeah.
traditional. St. Anne's reel and all these things, so
Right.
that's the stuff that's keeping the music alive, around here.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's so cool when you hear like a version of a tune in Scotland, or it'll be the same tune in Scotland and Canada and Ireland, but it's just a
Mhm.
wee bit different, just a little
Yeah.
bit different. And I
Yeah.
love that kind of Chinese whispers sort of quality to tunes certainly. And I think it's a lovely thing is like the kind of cousinness between like America and Scotland and
Mm.
Ireland and Canada,
Yeah.
because obviously so many of you guys came from here, right? So
Exactly. My family
so
came
much,
from Campbelltown.
right? Right.
1845, and
Yeah.
they settled to get free land. I mean, I think it was part of the lowland clearances,
Oh
and
yeah.
like they came to Ontario and they were given 5 acres. I mean, would they have 5 acres in Scotland at the time? They were
Right.
crofters, right? So,
Wow.
and that all that influence came here,
That's
and
amazing. Yeah.
they still have big Scottish festivals here.
Right.
Where they do that log thing, I don't know what you call it with the big log.
Caber tossing.
Yeah, they still do that here.
Yeah. Yeah. God.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the music is the background of all of that. It's the backbone of it.
Right.
If you don't have music, you don't have any of that stuff.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I've never really thought about it in that way, but yeah, it's definitely yeah, it's like the foundation, right?
Hmm.
Of it all.
Yeah. Um,
Interesting.
so you're the youngest of 8 children. Are any of
Mhm.
your siblings musical?
They're all interested in music, but not really, is the short answer. I mean, none of them are professional. None of them are like making their living as a musician. That said, my sister plays the fiddle pretty good. My brother Colin and my brother Owen played instruments and played in bands. My brother Colin's now a film director.
Wow, nice.
Um, so he is creative, but he doesn't play music really anymore. My brother Tom is like into electronic music and he likes to DJ and cut stuff together and that. And yeah, Mary, my sister, no, she doesn't really play. So there's a good amount of it. There's a good dose of it, but there's like I'm the only one who's kind of said I'm gonna do this thing and sort of commit my life to it,
Do you guys ever
dedicate
get
my life to it.
together and like play like, at Christmas time or something?
Nah, it's usually just drinking, you know. It's usually just a good drink, and it's rare that we would all be in the same place because half of us live down in England and half of us are in Scotland. And you
Mm,
know how these things are. Everyone has their own little ecosystem.
yeah,
It's like you've got the genre of the family and then all these kind of sub-genres, right?
yeah,
Spin-offs and life's like that. And everyone just, you get kind of caught up in the sort of the day to day, you know. But
yeah.
when we do come together, it's a good time and it's always interesting. And we like to get the kids together, the cousins, and
Nice.
that's cool. But no, there's not within my family. I guess there wouldn't be like music played uh, together as a kind of like social activity,
Hmm.
but definitely music shared, and it definitely was always um, a valuable thing
Hmm.
within the family. Like everyone was taught that this is a valuable thing. That was never in question.
See, I used to live in Nova Scotia, which is New Scotland, of course, and it's full of mix and max, and it's all Scottish names, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people immigrated to there, but the Highlanders immigrated to Cape Breton, and
Okay. Yeah.
the Cape Breton Island because it represented like the Highlands to them, right?
Okay.
And a lot of Irish to Newfoundland. But when you go to those places, you would make a killing in
Yeah.
Newfoundland. I tell you, there's a street there called Water Street. You'd be selling that place out every single night because it's all your music. It's all
Oh
that
wow.
type of music. Yeah.
I'd
And
love to go. I'd love to go. It's just I get asked all the time to go to
yeah,
Canada. I do, and it's like I said before, just while my daughter is 6, I just
yeah,
it's
I
not
get
the
it.
season. It's not the season, but I will, and I really appreciate all of the kind of. I just feel this total love emanating from Canada. So many people getting in touch,
That's good.
asking if I would come over. So,
Hmm.
I would love to some point.
You would just like because even when families get together, it's all in the kitchen and they have kitchen parties, kitchen Kayleys, and they're all performing in their kitchen. Most parties don't leave the kitchen because everyone's playing, and same thing in Newfoundland too. It's just beautiful.
Amazing, amazing, and it's sort of music at its purest.
Exactly.
level, because it's
Yep.
just, it's the true purpose of music, isn't it?
Yep. So I also read that at the age of 8, you were in Sandy's pub, and I Googled that, and it looks absolutely amazing. When I'm in Edinburgh, I'm going there.
Yeah.
How influential was that on your music career? Because you said that you sat at the end of the pub as an 8-year-old watching the performances. How did that affect you?
In every way conceivable. I mean, it's not even just on a musical level. It's like on a life level. Like it's where I learned what a man was. Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean? That was
Hmm.
my first example, I guess, of seeing adults out with the frame of being carers, right? They were just being, doing what people do in
Hmm.
pubs. And so it had a massive impact on me in terms of like I think in ways there were things about it that were not good. I mean, it was like a room this size and everyone's smoking roll-ups and it's just like everyone's drinking and that side of it. You wouldn't see that now. You just wouldn't. When I was a kid, you used to always see a 7-year-old girl with a baby on her hip standing outside the pub waiting on dad or mum. And you wouldn't see that now. The world's changed and it's
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
And I think in ways it's good. I think in ways it's good, but I think also in other ways it's like maybe we sell our kids this kind of lie of like, oh, grown-ups are all just sorted and have their stuff together and they don't, it's
Hmm.
all just very controlled, and then we compartmentalize it. And
Yeah.
at night the grown-ups are away having a good time and the kids don't maybe see it as much as they used to.
Mhm.
I wonder,
Yeah.
I don't know how it is in Canada, but my sense in the UK is like there's this compartmentalization of things. And I like it when I've been to places like Spain and Italy, right? It's different. Like kids will
Mhm.
be out at 10 at night
Yep.
running around and their parents are having a glass of wine and it feels more wholesome and more
Mhm.
integrated.
Yep.
But I feel lucky. I feel lucky that I got to grow up in a time where my mum could take me there at eight
Hmm.
years old. And I mean, the guys literally taught me everything about music. It's where I learned everything. And not
Wow.
just about playing music, but I mean, waiting your turn and
Mhm.
being respectful and
Yep.
and and even honestly the like what violence was and how something could flip and how to be and like it
Yeah.
was all of it. So it was everything in terms of um what made me the person that I am, I think.
Was was it very violent there back in those days? Because like I've seen pictures and my cousin's husband's from Glasgow and I've heard that there was a lot of violence.
Yeah, I'd say it was normal to expect that there could be something happen
Hmm.
of a moment. And like I mean, where I grew up, the local pub was called the Pop Inn, and it had sign written on the outside. It had the Pop Inn and Stagger Out, you know, right? Sign written in paint, and yeah, I think a lot of alcohol. I think a lot of violence, and I think way less awareness around things like mental health or things
Mm.
like neurodivergence or any of that stuff just wasn't on the menu. It's
Yeah.
like so I think we're as a species like we're starting to
Come a
maybe.
long way.
I think so.
When I was in Helensborough, we went to a hockey game in Paisley
Oh yeah.
and Paisley Pirates. And
Mhm.
when after I got out of the Navy, I went to work at a nuclear plant. And there was a guy there that I was working with, and he used to work at the one that's in northern Scotland by John O'Groats there. What's it called? Dunoon or something?
Right, Dunoon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he said,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, you went to Paisley? Did you get beat up?" I said,
Yeah.
I said, "No." He says, "That's rough, man. You don't want to be going
Yeah.
there."
Yeah.
Okay,
But
well,
sometimes if you don't know, it's a good thing
yeah,
because you act normal and then so it's fine.
yeah.
I remember one time in Germany, we were looking for a place to have a beer after a show, and we couldn't find anywhere. And eventually, we found this little pub, and we went in there, and we were having a beer. And we're, yeah, this is cool, having a beer. Looked around and I said, oh, so like a flag. I was like, that looks like a swastika. Looked around, another flag. I was like, oh. And then we looked around, there was like loads of like biker
Oh,
dudes, right?
geez.
And we thought, ooh. But in some ways, I think the fact that we just didn't know and
Yeah.
went in it's like in life, anything, right? If you go in normal and
Yeah.
like almost like there's no ice, you break the ice and so it's
Yeah.
fine. That's probably why you were fine there.
We went to a pub, had a bunch of beer, and nobody bothered us. I think they probably knew why we were there, with the tragedy that had happened. So, but everyone was really nice to us. But Helensburgh was beautiful. I loved it there. I'm gonna go back sometime. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, so it's beautiful. Yeah.
So, when did you write your first song?
I was 15
Wow.
and I guess I'd written I mean when I wrote my first good song I was 15, I'd written a lot of
Nice.
rubbish before that and I guess I had a sense like, oh, this maybe is kind of good,
Mm-hmm.
like there's something there
Yeah.
because I'd written other stuff that just I don't know that I just it didn't feel like it had its own weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember when I was 15, I wrote this song, and I fancied a girl loads, and I just wrote about that. And I remember thinking, I'll just be real honest about that, and so I just said what I thought, and that's kind of how I learned how to write songs. Something clicked. I thought, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I just if I'm honest,
Mm-hmm.
if I be honest, then that's what it is.
Yeah.
It clicked, it opened, and from there, I started to understand what I could do with it.
I uh I took th three songwriting courses. One was from a Canadian artist who's just amazing. That was in person. Then I did two songwriting sessions with an artist in Nashville. Her name's Mary Gauthier.
Yeah, I know her. I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, I read
Well,
her
I don't
book.
know her on a personal level, but we shared a couple of festivals I played at, and she
She's
was there, and
amazing,
she's
eh?
great. Yeah,
She's
incredible.
known for writing the saddest song ever written.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she helped me with two songs, and what the one of the big takeaways was that I had too many words in there. I had to cut
Right.
out some words that really didn't mean anything, and I constantly do that when I write, and then I step back, and then when I have the guitar, I said, "Why do I have those words?" I just cross them out, and then I redo it, right? So that was a big takeaway that I learned from her. She's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's 90% editing.
Yeah.
Songwriting is like 90% of it is just, you have a seed. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'll have like maybe a chorus or a line or something, and I'll think, oh,
Mhm.
that's something. But then it's just the editing and editing and
Yeah.
editing.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think, 9 times out of 10, if you think about what sculpture is, sculpture is not usually adding clumps of stone on.
Mm,
You're chipping, you're
yeah.
removing what needs to be removed so that the core idea is kind of clear enough, and that takes confidence and kind of nervousness at the same time. I always say you want to feel like a mix of nervous and confident.
Yeah.
Confident that you've expressed your idea,
Yeah.
nervous because you've been vulnerable enough for the song to be somewhat interesting. Because
Yeah.
if you sat down and said, I'm okay about how you left me and that's okay, I'll figure it out. That's not going to be a great song
No.
ever.
No.
You know what I mean? It could be if you were saying, I'm devastated, but I wish you all the best. That's I Will Always Love You.
Hmm.
That's Dolly Parton, and that's a gorgeous
Oh yeah.
sentiment, right?
Mm.
Or it could be like, I'm not okay with you doing that. I think that was wrong. So I think songwriting, where in normal life we're constantly trying to be reasonable, we're
Hmm.
constantly trying to be rational and level headed. Songwriting doesn't want that. It wants you to just, you
Pour it
know,
out.
totally. Yeah, I think so.
So in 2018, I had a mental health breakdown and I was in the hospital. And while I was in there, a lot of stuff happened with my relationship, and I had a stepdaughter, and she called me a garbage human being because I had a breakdown. So here I am laying in the hospital, and I thought, this is a song,
God, yeah,
and I have to show you, I wrote the song. This is a piece of coloring paper that was in the thing, and I wrote the song. This is it. It's called Human. I changed it from being garbage human to human garbage,
yeah,
and it got out all the emotion. It got out all my anger. It
right,
got everything out, and I put it on the side, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do anything with that. So I've been working, I was working, I still am with a producer and engineer because I'm learning the profession, right?
yeah,
And I said, maybe it's time that we do that. And I did it and I released it, and I'm very proud of it because it tells exactly what happened to me and that I'm going to be okay. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. And it's
you know,
like you can't, so no one could argue with that.
no,
That's what I love about songwriting is like it's not about, you can't get it wrong if you're honest. That's how I look at it. You can't write a bad song if you're honest. I'd
exactly.
rather listen to that song by you, maybe recorded on an iPhone, than some like perfect song with a bridge and a this and a that, and it's recorded in the best studio in Nashville,
Yeah.
but there's no honesty in it. It's all about the honesty. And that's like my favorite thing about songwriting is that's what people want. And I think
Mm,
even on the gig, sometimes I think people want to see someone just be human,
yeah.
because the world's so stupid. Like
Yeah.
the way we live is so, the way we mask everything and hide everything and show things we don't feel and don't show
Mhm.
things we do feel is just, it's so stupid, and I think to tie into the trauma and the mental health side of it, I mean, that's a huge problem.
Mhm.
It's a massive problem for people that we don't feel like we have permission to have feelings, and I think songwriting is an amazing place for
Oh,
you
it's
to
very,
have permission to express feelings,
yeah.
or just to have them, even
Mhm.
if you're listening. So yeah.
So again from your bio, you've had loss and addiction in your early life, and I don't want to get into that because I don't want you to have to relive anything
I'm
like that.
happy to I'm happy to talk about, if you
Well,
had any.
if you want to
Happy to.
talk about it, that's fine. But what my question was how did music help you through those difficult times?
Well, I'll tell you how it helped me and I'll tell you how it didn't, because I think it's important to kind of
Yeah, that's
cover
interesting.
both sides.
Yeah.
So how it helped me and how it always has helped me is like it's given me a garden to go to, no matter what's occurring in my life, no matter if someone I love has left, or my kid is going through something really hard and I can't help, or
Hmm.
my friend is going through something hard and I can't help, or there's some kind of physical issue. It's like you've got that, and it's
Hmm.
you can go there, and that gives you a confidence in life, and it gives you a self-respect, and it gives you it gives you a place to put the darkness,
Hmm.
because some people that don't have a creative outlet might go and like cheat on their partner or blow up their life, or so I think when you have a place that you can go and be dark and mysterious and kind of like dangerous
Hmm.
in a healthy way, in a controlled way, and in a way that's working towards a point, working towards a purpose, and then hopefully in a way that's going to actually help people in the world. That's how it's helped me. And that's always been how it's helped me. And for me, I'm sure for you, Chris, it's like eating dinner. I need it. It's
Yeah.
like, I need it. I
Hmm.
need it. And so that's how it's helped me. How it didn't help me in my experience, I've had a lot of different experiences in terms of like trauma. So, I experienced abuse as a kid, and I experienced the loss of my dad. in a way that was he had a very aggressive kind of cancer,
No.
which just was, you know, I, I, I can't explain it too in depth because it was just so grotesque. But basically, I wound up with PTSD from that because it was just my brain couldn't process it.
Yeah.
And also, I recently discovered that I'm neurodivergent, that I have for sure ADHD. I have that. I've been diagnosed with that. As for other stuff, quite possibly, I don't know. That's what I know right now. And the point of me saying this is where music didn't help me was like I had to go and do therapy. I had to go and do therapy. I had to do EMDR. I don't know if you've heard of EMDR.
No.
It's really interesting treatment that they've discovered, which they initially used on Vietnam War veterans. Was the
Hmm.
first time that they discovered it, and it was a woman who was sitting, and she had PTSD, and she was watching a blade of grass move like this, right? And she processed something. It processed something in her head, and she got over this trauma, right? And so what they discovered was that actually when your eyes are, it's called eye movement. I don't want to quote it wrong, eye movement something.
Hmm.
And when your eyes are moving like this, you're able to process difficult memories and
Oh,
move through
wow.
them because trauma's to do with it getting stuck. It's stuck, it can't move, right?
Hmm.
So I did EMDR for the stuff from my dad, and that was really interesting because it brought up connections then back to other traumas. That's the interesting thing about trauma is like it'll connect, right? It's not necessarily like, oh, I've got trauma about the time this happened. It might connect to like a whole strand of other things. So for me, I lost a friend when I was 19. He
Hmm.
fell off a roof in a real bad way. I had trauma about that. Um, I want to be clear when I say trauma, what I mean as well, and you'll know yourself, is not like, I think it's an overused word, unfortunately, in society now. People
Yeah.
are using it to describe, oh, my ex dumped me and gaslit me, so I'm
Yeah.
traumatized. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm
No.
talking about is like actual traumatic events that kind of break your brain,
Yeah.
and then
Hmm.
your brain can't actually get past it. And I think so. I just want to be really clear and make the point that for me, real professional help was what helped me process the trauma. And
Hmm.
that's still something that I'm working on. And, to some extent, as someone whose brain has just experienced particular life events, um, I'll deal with the kind of impact of some of my trauma forever on some level. But I'm
Hmm.
doing pretty good. I'm in a good spot.
That's great.
And a lot of the reason that I'm in a good spot now is down to the therapy and down to the EMDR that I did. And I would just urge anyone who is dealing with actual trauma to do that, to seek that out and to do that.
Hmm. Absolutely. I went away for a week and did some in-house therapy with firefighters, paramedics, police officers,
Right,
veterans, and also included in that are like border guards. There are
right,
like police officers here because we have a big issue
yeah,
with immigration, right? And also jail guards.
okay, yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're treated terribly every single day, you know?
And even just what they're seeing. This is the
Yeah.
thing that people don't understand
Hmm.
about like police or jail guards, like you say, is like even if they weren't getting actually attacked, which they are, by the way,
Hmm.
they're, they say, this is really interesting. They say like the average cop sees more, is more traumatized than like someone in the army
Hmm.
sometimes because they're just seeing every day. They're seeing,
Yeah.
terrible things like
Hmm.
real bad stuff. So it's I think it's a very misunderstood um, segment of society actually.
Hmm.
Law enforcement obviously, army as well. And like you say, that I'd never really thought about the jail guards, but even surely what they're seeing in terms of like what inmates are doing to each other and themselves, and it's a lot for sure.
Well,
It's a lot.
I don't really want to talk about it on here, but they go through a lot of stuff,
Right,
stuff
right.
thrown at them that's just disgusting.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
they have to be on guard all the time. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that music in general helped you to cope and move away from any negative influences that you might have been having?
Yes, I think so. In the same way that I think having any, I mean, I do boxing training.
Oh, cool.
That's similar. That's similar
Oh,
because
yeah.
you have to if you have to be there at 10 and be in a good spot, then that kind of sorts out the night before. So
Yep.
sometimes if I had gigs, maybe that would uh keep me on an even keel, to have like a focus and to have something that I'm working towards, to have a goal. But I think I have had times in my life where if I had unprocessed trauma and I wasn't taking care of myself, where, I think you have to, in my experience, I had to do the work as well. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, as an example, like music, I definitely think writing music and making music and recording, that's one thing. But then the whole scene of like bars and
Yeah.
clubs, and there's a lot of alcohol, there's a lot of I guess permission to
Mhm.
live in a certain way, which
Yep.
if you're not careful, it's very easy to normalize a level of substance stuff there if
Yeah.
you're not careful, if you don't know what you're doing. So um yes, the music itself definitely, I think flow state, I don't know
Mhm.
if you experience that, Chris, in terms of your songwriting, but when I'm writing, I feel very much like I disappear, my sense of time disappears. I'm really in it and I'm gone.
Yep.
And
We call
people, I
it
know,
like tunnel vision. Like that's the way I
right.
am. I don't hear anything except for right here when I'm doing it.
Okay, right. So that's a good way of saying it. And I hear swimmers and fighters talk about that, and chess players. So I
Mhm.
think for everyone, I think if you can have one place in your life
Yep.
where you experience that, I think that's a great thing, very
Mhm.
healthy.
Absolutely. Are any of your songs about any of those subjects, like healing and getting better and things like that?
Yeah, I think all of them, but I think it's hard to understand what you're writing about until a while after. There's a great quote, I can't remember who said it, that life is lived forwards and understood backwards. And I think
Very true.
songs
Yeah.
songs are like that. I don't know how it
Yeah.
is for you, but I'll find sometimes the meaning of my songs will be obvious a long time after. I remember listening to my first record, which I made when I was 21. And at that time, my dad he just died, and I was really drinking a lot, and I really had a lot of unprocessed trauma. And I was just drinking and playing gigs, and made this record. And it's a beautiful album. It's a beautiful album because it was steeped in all of that kind of pain that I was in at that time. But I couldn't hear it. I'd have people coming to gigs, God, that was beautiful, Adam. And I felt nothing. I felt nothing. I was just singing it and just,
Yeah.
I didn't feel anything at
Yeah.
all.
Hmm.
But then I was on a drive like about 4 years ago. So I would have been, 29 at the time. And I was driving in the car and through the Highlands, and I put the record on, and I was just crying and crying, because the kind of I got what everyone else was saying to me.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I could
Yep.
see myself
Yeah.
like 10 years later. I could see it. I was like, oh, they were right. People were crying at my gigs all the time, and I didn't feel anything. So it felt amazing to re-access that moment and experience it. And so, yeah, I think definitely the first. I mean, I would say yes, all my music is about healing because, like I say, I mean, because I came from a certain background and because I've seen certain things, I have an amazing life.
Hmm.
And also it's always going to be like, have this flavor of that stuff that's happened, that's in there. That's never not going to be in there.
Yeah.
And it makes life more beautiful. And I see my kid and I know that she's having this life that I never got.
Hmm.
And that's gorgeous, but it's also like it's painful too, right? So I think the answer is like all of the music has all of that stuff in it. And I think that we're also vibrational people. We feel stuff. So I think the music, even when I'm not directly singing about healing, or I think it's why, for instance, probably why you felt something off of the stuff I was putting out and we're
Yeah.
talking now, right? Because
Yep. Hmm.
there's a lot of shared um, stuff there, you know.
Yep.
So I think it's cool like that. I like the idea that as songwriters we make this thing and we put it out and it kind of attracts
Yep.
our people to us, you know.
Hmm. So I know you told me the name of the band you were in, and I don't want to get it wrong. You were a member of
Rura,
Rura,
Rura, yes.
and you had extensive touring schedules, like you already said. Did that affect your mental health at all?
Yeah, definitely, hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. Touring as a skill that you have to learn, and I didn't know how to do it well. You could do it really well, and I had people around me who were doing it really well, but I certainly wasn't. I was just because if you think about it, if you're on a tour, I mean, I'm talking about tours where I did 28 gigs in a row in Germany, stuff like that, every single night. And then you just need to have one bad night, drink too much, wake up real hungover the next day. I'll just eat a hot dog. I'll just this, I'll just that. Then you're drinking again. And then it's very easy for a tour to become this kind of uh, like really great prison in a way, because you're just getting on the bus.
Hmm.
You're not even driving. You're getting on the bus. You sit there,
Hmm.
you know, you go, you play, and you drink. And certainly for me at that time, struggling with my drinking, it was a really bad place for me. And also like just on a stimulation level, it's a lot, and you're expected to be happy. That's a weird kind of like
Hmm.
thing that people have around musicians. Right, I paid my money,
Yeah.
be happy.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing what you love, be happy. But
Yeah.
you know, one guy could have just broke up with his girlfriend. Another guy maybe is like his dad's ill. Another guy's, you know, whatever. And really,
Hmm.
you're just working.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely experienced also boundaries and not having them. I didn't really have boundaries. I didn't really know if someone came up at the end and said that changed my life, blah blah blah, and they're chatting to you and just get sucked into it and then go drinking with them. And I just didn't know how to like
Yeah.
have a frame. So I think if you have a real good frame and you've built a really good frame for yourself, you can have a great experience of touring.
Hmm.
If you're sleeping right and eating right and looking after yourself, it can be amazing. And it is now for me. I know how to do it, but
Hmm.
I was very inexperienced in my early 20s.
Yeah. So your song that you perform with them that I watched the video of, Weary Days, is one of the most beautiful songs that I've ever heard. And I mean that. I love that song. It's on my playlist. I'm going to listen to it a lot.
Thank you.
What was your inspiration for that song?
Well, that song was a funny one because let me get this right. I had the chorus for a good long while. And it was interesting to write songs for the band for Rura because it's a bit different to writing my own stuff. Because when you're writing your own stuff, you can just see what comes out. And
Hmm.
when you're writing for a band which has a sort of pre-existing sound,
Hmm.
Rura were like a band before I joined, and they did instrumental music. And then I did the first album with them, and I added some songs, and there was a pre-existing quality to it. So I knew Weary Days came on the second album, and I knew that I had to come up with something that kind of captured the sound that we had as a band. So
Hmm.
I had that chorus, and then I was struggling. It had another verse which I was struggling with, and then it just kind of clicked at some point. And the inspiration behind it was a relationship. Um, I guess I was in a relationship in my early 20s, which I was just away all the time, you know? There's a
Mhm.
great line in a Towns Van Zandt song where he says, I'm not much of a lover, it's true. I'm here, then I'm gone, and I'm forever blue, you know? And that was me. I was just like either away gigging or back home and sad that I wasn't away gigging because when I was gigging, as much as I could have a bad mental health period, at least I was like in the noise, you know, in the kind of the fairground of touring and away and also when you're touring, you don't really have any responsibilities. It's like being a child
Mhm.
because you just get in the bus and then the tour manager goes, go there, and then there's a hotel, and then they
Right.
bring you your meal. It's like being a toddler almost,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
So I was pretty miserable when I was at home. And my girlfriend at the time, bless her, was just doing her best to be with me as that person. There's maybe some parallels. I don't know. I mean, you've been in the army, and like I'm sure people have a hard time maybe being in normal life. You know, if they've been in the
Me.
army, and yeah, sure. If you're, you know, you've got this unit and you do this thing, and it's just that's what you do. You eat this food, you do this at this time, you do it every day, and then you come back home and it's like it's tricky to go for a meal and pay for it because you're like, I'm just why would I pay for a meal
Yeah.
every night? You're getting so it's or you don't know how to really. I wouldn't know how to have conversations with people in
Mhm.
my family because they say, "Oh, my boss this and I'm that," and I just that's not my life. I have no idea. I can't relate to like a normal sort of job, and I'd imagine that you experience that a
Same
lot.
with me. I was in
Right,
submarines for most of my career.
right, yeah,
And when I'd get home
wow.
from sea, I just want to be alone, because I was with on a submarine with 80 people. You know,
Yeah,
you got to squeeze by them. The doors open when you're going to the bathroom. You don't want to know some of the stuff that went on. But then we brought
yeah,
women came on board, and it all evened out. Then it got normal.
okay.
But still, I'd get home, and like I that was my first marriage, and it's like I just didn't want to be around anybody. I wanted to be alone, and I didn't know why. That's the thing. I didn't know why. It
Yeah,
took me
that's
years
tough.
to figure it out.
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough, and it's like, yeah, it's just I didn't similarly. I don't know. I don't even know how you deal with that. To be honest, I don't think you can. And you hear a lot about with oil rig workers, right?
Yeah.
How they'll just you're just on this little you're in this little other planet, this other ecosystem, and it's
Hmm.
very, very hard to kind of go between the two. There's a friend of mine's who's a singer-songwriter. She has a song where she says, "We go and we roam and we bring the worst of ourselves home again," you know?
Mm,
And I think,
interesting.
bless my girlfriend at that time, you know, a lot of my life was like that. I didn't really like who I was when I came home.
Hmm.
I didn't like, it's not a nice feeling when you feel just like I'm just an asshole and I'm just here and I don't want to be here. And this person wants me and wants to be with me. And I think a lot of the song was about maybe that was about like when these weary days are done, we'll be in the sun.
Hmm.
And also I wanted to say to her at that time, the first verse is like, I'm lucky for your kind of love. And that's true. Like, I mean, I was because really at that time, she loved me at a time when I didn't really know how to love myself. I
Hmm.
was in trauma, I was drinking, I was irresponsible, and I was away all the time, and then I was back and I was grumpy. And
Hmm.
she was just like this kind of very calm, very bright light
Hmm.
for me at that time. And she was able to do that for me. And so that song was kind of an attempt at a thank you to her at that
Nice.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was the same with me. Like at the time, my then wife I'd get home and she'd say, okay, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. No, I can't. I just can't
Right.
do it. I don't know why I can't do it, but I was having anxiety attacks and I didn't know what they were at the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You probably, because you probably thought you were ill, right? You probably had
I thought I
moments,
was
oh
having a
my
heart
God, maybe
attack.
I'm right. Right. Yeah.
I had a anxiety attack one time. I was on the submarine, and not very often did I drive. And I was driving in a hurricane off the coast of Nova Scotia. We were heading up to go to Newfoundland for a port visit. And I'm driving the submarine, and I was at periscope depth, which was like at 57 feet. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't keep the boat up, and I'm like pulling up
Oh
like
my
an
God.
airplane. And we were going down, down, down. We settled at 550 feet, and I had a load of crap in my pants, because I was so scared that we were all going to die, and
Yeah.
I'm having an anxiety attack. We're going down, going down. We couldn't get back up again. It all sorted itself out. But how do you get over something like that? Like, your life flashes in front of your face, and
Yeah.
thank God I
That's
don't do that
crazy.
anymore. Took a lot of therapy to get over that.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. It's like that's like a did you have any thoughts about like I guess you must have had thoughts about death. Was there a
Oh
thought in
yeah.
your brain when it was happening of
Oh
like
yeah. I
this is
still
it?
have coffin dreams.
Right.
I still have dreams where inside the submarine's full of water and my friends are floating and I'm trying to get my breath, my last breath. Those are still dreams I have. But thank God they're not that often. They're only once in a while. It's
And does it feel when they do come, is it like a little bit more, you have some more perspective on them through the therapy and stuff? It's
yeah,
easier
it's
maybe
like
to,
that didn't happen. It's just a dream. It didn't happen. It's a nightmare. So, like, and I see my psychologist once a month and we talk about these things. So she's helped me huge. I've been seeing her for a long time now. So,
well,
um,
good on you. Good on you for doing the work, because I
yeah,
mean, listen, the sad truth is there's a lot of people that just don't. And that's a real terrible place to be in your life if you're dealing with something like that and you're not doing that work, there's nothing worse.
they suffer in silence is what we say.
Until it's not silent, until something pops and who knows, but good on you for doing the work anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So do you enjoy being a solo artist rather than being in a band?
These days, yes, and I think it works for me on different levels. Some of the levels are just pretty practical, like the administrative work of taking a band anywhere
Hmm.
is a lot. It's just a lot, and I'm a one man band. I'm definitely I'm reaching the point where it's starting to become a wee bit insane that I don't have anyone helping me with stuff. Because I mean, I probably spend like 6 hours a day just on social media,
Hmm.
and then I'm like coaching people and I'm doing gigs and I'm a dad, and
Yeah.
it's a lot. It is a lot. So definitely everything I can do to make things as uncomplicated as possible, i.e. solo gigging, but also my favorite, you've not heard of a singer called Dougie MacLean, have you?
Yes, I
He's
have.
just, right. He wrote the song Caledonia.
Love that song.
It's an amazing song. He wrote that song, and I've met him a good few times. I've shared gigs with him. He was always very kind of. He was a big impact. He had a big impact on me
Hmm.
as a guy
Hmm.
because he is totally decentralized. It's him and his wife. They put on the gigs. He'll go and do gigs for other people, but they put on a lot of their own gigs,
Hmm.
and his family do videos for him, and he cuts about in a big camper van called the Caledonia, and just does these gigs, and he's a real wholesome guy, and I've never seen anybody hold a room like him. And often it's just him and the guitar, and it's the conversation and the jokes, and he does the songs, and I remember seeing him and just thinking like, that's it for me. That's it for me. If I can work towards
Hmm.
across 40 years,
Yep.
if in 40 years I can be like 70 and be that guy that's
Hmm.
like where he is, that's enough for me in this lifetime. And so I love the kind of chatting and just the conversation and the
Hmm.
guitar and just I love that. So I really enjoy the solo thing these days. I was terrified of it for years and I only ever played in bands. But now that I've done it since COVID, I've just done that and play my girlfriend Jen plays keys, and we quite often do gigs together. And I'm doing one full band show this year, but mainly I love the kind of freedom of it, you know.
Yeah. I used to play in a veterans group and we'd play at the Legion every Friday night. It was like a
Oh, cool.
fundraiser for them. They would fish and chip night and because it's the Legion, that's at 5 o'clock, five till
Perfect.
seven, and then
Perfect.
everyone goes home and it's late night.
Oh,
So
that's my dream. That's my dream, honestly.
a lot
Like,
of the songs that the group were wanting to play were about suicide, and I said I can't do that anymore. I
God.
just can't do it. I
Oh
can't
my
play those
God.
songs. You
No.
know, I want to play happy
No.
songs or
It's really
because
interesting.
we just played covers, right? It was just covers, all kinds of different songs. But like we played Tragically Hip. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're like our Canadian national band. They're like,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Heard of
our
them. Yeah.
the lead singer passed away from brain cancer a few years ago, but like their music is amazing, and I play a lot of their music because I love it. But that's the kind of stuff that we were playing, but then they wanted to play some of these songs about suicide, and I just couldn't do it anymore because you relate a veteran with PTSD and suicide, and I don't want to be involved in that, It's not my place. So,
I saw a stand-up recently who said he was saying, when you hear someone's taken their own life, and he says, and people always say like, God, I just can't imagine that at all. And he's like, really? You can't? He's like, he's the guy, like,
yeah.
because he has been there. And I think, yeah, it's like you have to be really careful with that kind of. I think any kind of content is people almost just consume stuff or do stuff or say stuff, right? And they don't
Mm,
really think about.
yeah.
And actually, what you take in, what you do, what you say, it's important. It's really important. It's really interesting as you were chatting there. I was thinking about how isn't it interesting how in World War II all the songs were just like "We'll meet again," just like
Yep,
real light. People
exactly.
didn't want like
Nope.
kind of heavy duty. Let's get to the heart. It was like let's just keep it light. Let's keep
Yep.
it
Yep.
simple and let's enjoy some relief in a way. And I think I mean, I'm like that. I'm like, I just want like, if you go and listen to most of my music, it is sad, but it's also actually generally like, it's just like, it's going to be all right. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it moving. And so I totally get that. I get that. And I honestly sometimes don't listen to much music for that reason.
Mm.
Because a piece of music is a powerful thing, right? It
I
can
don't listen
really,
to too much new music because it's all fabricated pop stuff. It's not very good. I listen more on YouTube, and that's, how I found you and that, and Instagram. But I don't want to listen to that stuff. I don't want to hear somebody doing a remix of a classic song that doesn't need to be remixed. The original is beautiful. Why redo it? That's the way I see it. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't listen to much of that either. I've had to be very conscious of even what I watch on television, what I read in
Hmm.
my book, what
Hugely,
music I
yeah.
listen to. It all elevates the mood. And if you're watching, war stories of people getting killed, that's just going to bring you down.
God, I have no idea why people seem to love watching these like serial killer
Oh yeah, no.
things and that. It's crazy to me. I'm like,
Yep.
why would you do that? It's crazy.
We try and keep it really positive. Like, my partner, she's huge into gardening, and during COVID, we gardened a lot, our own vegetables
Awesome.
and everything. And we got into Gardener's World that's been on for 60 years. And the one
There
that's
you go. Yeah.
the one out of Edinburgh there, I can't remember what it's called. It's a gardening show out of there too. And I had her watch Still Game.
Oh, brilliant. Aye,
I think I watched
brilliant.
it 3 times all the way through, and by the
Oh
end,
yeah,
I think she
dude.
was finally getting the accent by the end of it.
I love Still Game.
Oh my
It's
God.
so, and do you know what? It's what's so great about for everyone watching who doesn't know what Still Game is. It's like a Scottish kind of sitcom about a couple of kind of granddads that are like best
Pensioners.
mates, right? And But what's so great about Still Game is like it's just totally what it's like. You know, it's like people, slagging each other off, and that's very much the humor, and it's brilliant,
Oh, is it ever? Like
amazing.
I tell you, I was going to tell you the other night when you were looking at places to play. I was going to say, "Damn, I should have told him to go play at the Klansman."
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
sure you would have got a giggle out of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you know what was brilliant? We did a tour one time with some Irish musicians, and they'd never heard of it, and we got them into it, and they just loved it as well because it's similar humor. But I think what's great about Still Game is like it's so Scottish, but it's also so universal.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, like how is it in Canada for taking the mick out of each other? Is that like what's it like in
You know
terms of
what? Everyone's really woke these days. You really got to
oh
watch what you say to
God.
somebody. Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh
I don't
no.
even say anything to anybody anymore,
Oh, jeez.
because some people they just too sensitive. They can't take a joke. They really
Jeez. That's
can't.
a privilege, right? That's a privilege. If that's what you're getting upset about, it's a privilege, I'd say.
I grew up with that. I joined the Navy when I was 18. I left when I was 43. So 25 years of dishing it out and getting it back,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was dishing it out to everybody, the captain and everybody, I mean, so
It's healthy. I think
it
it's
is.
healthy. It's how it
Yeah.
should be. You know, my daughter, I had a real proud dad moment because the other day I was brushing my teeth, and Rosa was brushing her teeth, and I had my top off just before bed, and she went like that. She grabbed my love handle. She went, "Look at the jiggly belly," like that, and jiggled it. I was like, "Oh my God!" It was like a whole new moment of like our relationship. So it was brilliant.
So I only have a few more questions, and most of
Yeah,
these are like not too deep like the other
no
ones.
worries. Yeah.
Um, when you're writing a song, do you usually have an idea and lyrics before you start crafting a melody?
No, no. These days, there's a mix of ways that I write. One is that I just have, if something pops to me, it's usually both at the same time.
Mm,
Or a bit of like, I often think with a melody, it's more like the melody wants to say something, and then it's my job to kind of like
hmm.
find out what that is. So it's like a listening process. I might have a little voice note, and then I would just work with that. And then the other thing I'll do is like I'll sit and just generate 3 ideas in an hour. That's an exercise that I do. And I give it to people as an exercise. It's real good. So like 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, and
Hmm.
just something. It could be a chorus or it could be, but for me, the movement from one section of the hour to the next can quite quickly generate different tempos or different feels. It's a really nice. If I'm stuck a bit, I'll do that for a few days, and that's another way that I generate ideas. But at this stage in my life as a songwriter, having spent 13 years, I'm trying to. I've got so many ideas that I have to just pick something and finish it.
Yeah.
So I never I've generated so much stuff now that I never am like, oh, I've got writer's block or how do I generate more ideas? You know, I'm not in that kind of like season. I'm more in the season as a writer of how to finish all these little bits that I've kind of got everywhere. So
Hmm.
it's way more songwriting for me is way more like being a kind of detective than a an artist.
Hmm.
It's more like, oh, where was that bit? That's over there, right? Maybe that could go here now. Oh, maybe that goes with that. Oh, remember that? It's like I've got a big wall in my mind and I'm kind of tying all these bits and bits of string between them and wondering, would that maybe go on an album? You know, because albums have a presence to them. So often I'm thinking, is that something that could go towards this record? Or maybe I've got a record I'm making with someone else. You
Hmm.
know, there's some things that you'd feel that's a cool idea, but
Yeah.
is that more of a band thing or is that more of a like
Hmm.
not for this thing? So I tend to think in albums. Even though no one listens to albums anymore. I love it as a kind of art form.
Hmm.
Like I said at the start of the our chat today, like, I mean, I think the album is sort of like, if you're a songwriter, it's like your book. You know how a novelist has a book? You
Yeah.
couldn't be a novelist and be like, I'm a novelist, and then you've just got like a couple of pages. You're like, see, you know,
Hmm.
it's like it's about the collection for me. I
Yeah.
think a songwriter should make an album, because it gives you the opportunity to kind of work with something a bit
Hmm.
fleshier than a couple of songs. You know, are
Hmm.
you working towards a collection right now? What are you working on in your
Well,
kind of
I've been putting out songs, and I think I'm about 32 or something like that now. And
great?
they're my stories, and I'm not a great singer, but I've been working at it. But I want my stories out there. And how I'm communicating those stories is through professional videos. So, the image has to tell the story with the song. So I went on this website called Upwork, and I found an amazing person that does videos. She's in South Africa, Cape Town, and she's done all my videos for me. And we have a Zoom meeting. We talk about what we're going to do for the idea. She sends me a storyboard, and then I approve it, and then
Wow,
she does it, and I don't have to do it because I don't have time for that. I'm too busy.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So is it like a kind of it's it's a collaborative project, really?
Well, it's
You're
between me and her. I pay her to do all the video work, through Upwork, the website. And her name is Mariska, and she's fantastic. She's amazing.
wow,
And she's done all my videos. Like the last video that I had made was for it's a song called Private Blackstock's War. So it's he was from West Lothian, I think, or Mid Lothian. I'm not sure. But I found him when I was doing my genealogy. He was working on a farm in Lockerbie, and he got mobilized to go to World War One, and he was only in theater for 4 months and got killed. And I
wow,
said, "That's a song. This guy has the same last name as me. We might be related. I don't know. You go far back enough, you see that you were. I have a cousin that lives in just outside Edinburgh, a distant cousin, and we talk almost every day
wow,
on Messenger. Yeah, so I thought, that's a song, but it needs to be told, and I think I got 1,600 views or something on it on
it's awesome.
Facebook, and with our Remembrance Day coming up, like on Twitter, I sent it to the Royal Scots because he was a Royal Scot out of the castle, right? And so I really had to tell that story. He's not even from my country, but yeah, we might have been related. So that's how I communicate, and that's the medium that I use. I find YouTube
Wow,
further for me. Yeah.
good on you. That's a really interesting way of
I'll send you her name, okay?
working.
I'll send
Yeah,
you that
definitely.
separately because she's spectacular.
Well, I've seen the clips and they look amazing. So
Yep,
yeah,
she
and
does.
and it's
She
great
just
if you find someone that you have like a good, sounds like you have a great working relationship and you're able to turn things around
Well,
pretty
she started
quickly.
using AI. Like, I have a
Right.
song coming out tomorrow. It's called Christmas at Sea, but I'm not doing anything with it because we don't celebrate anything Christmas before Remembrance Day, November 11th, Armistice Day.
Okay. Okay.
After that, like the video should be out next week. And that's when I'll start promoting it. But she used a bit of AI with it and everything, and it looked fantastic.
Wow.
So I'll send
Awesome.
you a link for that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, what do you think your best gig ever was, either as solo or as a band? The best gig ever you had?
I did a gig which was a theater show, and it was with members of a band called Portishead, who do like trip hop. They're quite a big band in the UK, and a band called Mogwai. Again, they're quite a big band in the UK, and a really great singer from a band called the Unthanks, and a guy called Martin Green, who's just an amazing mind in music in Scotland. And it was a sort of theatre show about migration and about the impact of, he had a grandmother who was Jewish and had to leave home during World War II.
Hmm.
And the whole show was about migration.
Cool.
And it was called Flit. And we toured that around really big theatres in the UK back in 2017. And I think it was a gig which it was really hard for me. It was really hard work, and I did a lot of growing as a person through the experience of doing that. And I think it was like one of those experiences, like it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also one of the most amazing. And
Hmm.
it kind of changed me as a songwriter, and it changed me as a just as an artist, and it changed my stories about what I was capable of.
Hmm.
I also did some touring with a fiddle player called John McCusker, and he taught me loads about just stagecraft and being holding a room and just the energy that you need to have to kind of
Hmm.
make it work. And
Yep.
so I suppose I'd think more in terms of times in my life, times where I suppose times where I felt like I leveled up
Yeah.
and I learned something. And
Hmm.
those are two that come to mind. I've had so many amazing experiences on the stage and so many terrible ones too that, it would be hard to pick an exact one. Um, I tend to more kind of think in times.
I looked on the list of people that you performed with, and you
Hmm.
performed with one of my all-time favorite folk artists, if you want to call him folk. I guess he's more Americana, John
Uh-huh.
Prine.
Yeah. So that was the craziest
Oh my God.
week of my life. Yeah, because,
A lucky guy you are.
well, definitely. I mean, what was so weird about it, Chris, was my dad, whose name was Chris, by the way,
Oh,
had just died, and I got asked to go and play at this festival in Denmark. Now, the festival is called Tuner, and it's spelled Tonder, and it was just the best music festival that I've ever been to. It was incredible. And I was playing there. It was really well received. It was just an amazing time. And I was pretty devastated because my dad had just passed, and
yeah.
he was a massive Towns Van Zandt fan
Hmm.
and a massive John Prine fan. Those were his two
Wow.
guys. So I got there. Towns died back, I think it was maybe 97 when Towns
I'm
passed,
not
maybe.
sure. I'm not sure
I don't
now.
know if you're aware of his work, but I mean,
Oh yeah.
he's
Yeah.
one of the best. And so I showed up to the festival. I was at the bar, and Towns Van Zandt's son was standing at the bar, and he looks just like Towns Van Zandt. So I went up to him and I said, "Look, I'm sure you hear this all the time." I just said, "You know, my dad loved your dad's music." And he said, "Well, here's to our dads." And we had a pint together
Nice.
for our dads. And then on the last day, on the Sunday, um, the festival organizer came up to me and said, "Listen, we want you to come and sing a bit at the closing ceremony." And this is in this massive tent. There's like, I don't know, 3,000 people in the main tent. And I said, "Great, cool." She said, "Every year we sing a song called May the Circle Be Unbroken." You'll
Yeah.
probably know it, Chris.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like an old folk song,
Yeah.
kind of gospel song.
Yeah.
And I
Johnny
said,
Cash
"Great,
used to play it.
there you go." So I said, "Great, I know it from Johnny Cash's version." She said, "Could you do verse two?" I said, "Definitely." And she said, "John's going to do verse one." I said, "John?" She said, "Yeah, John." So I turn up and I get on stage, and sure enough, John Prine. And so stood next to him and sung the song with him. And so that was it was just amazing, an amazing moment, because someone like that I mean, he's sadly passed now.
Yeah.
But to to meet someone like that is almost like it doesn't feel like he should be alive at the same time as you because of the kind of scope of his work, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. It's like almost like Robert Burns or like someone, I don't know, from another time, kind of.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. And yeah, very appreciative of having had that experience.
I've been very fortunate in my life. I don't know. Do you remember the rock band called Triumph?
No, I
No?
don't
Okay,
know that.
they're a Canadian band. They were huge. And I got to meet the lead singer and lead guitar player. And it's funny, his birthday's the same day as mine, but 10 years earlier. Or
Oh,
10
wow.
yeah, 10 years earlier. So he was born in 53. So I got to meet him. I'm sure if you heard their music, you'd know them. They were like a big stadium rock band. And I saw them in 1979 in Toronto, and they were, oh man, it was an amazing concert. Do you have a favorite song of John Prine's while we were talking about John Prine?
Yes, I do. Right now, I have an answer for you. It could be a different answer tomorrow, but I'll just
Okay,
answer it
that's
with
fine.
what is today, which is Hello in there.
Okay.
Um, and it's a song about, I think he was 24 when he wrote it, and it's a song about if you see an old person in the street, just say hello in there, you
Nice.
know?
Yeah.
And I just, something about the fact that a 24-year-old could see that that was like important
Hmm.
at such a selfish,
Yeah.
an age that's usually such a selfish age. And I
Yeah.
find that really moving that he thought it was important to like just look in and see who's in there. And I just think it's a beautiful statement. But also, Christmas in Prison is
Oh yeah. I've got
amazing.
some of I gotta have them on vinyl. I'll have to listen, see if I
Uh,
have those songs.
yeah.
My two favorite are Sam Stone,
Yes, that's an amazing song. Yeah.
and the first song I ever heard from John Prine was Angel from Montgomery.
Yeah. Bonnie Ray's version of that is
Bonnie Raitt is amazing on
unbelievable.
that song, and so is another woman called Susan Tedeschi. Her
Do
and
you know
her
what? She started following me on Instagram.
really? She's an
Yeah.
amazing guitar player.
She started following me on Instagram. And that was like, that was when I knew that I'd blown up on Instagram, was because my dad loved her.
I was at a concert in Ottawa when I was after my breakdown. So,
Mhm.
it was I went by myself because I was all by myself, and I went and saw I'm just having a brain fart right now. Steve Earle.
Oh, yeah.
Earle. One of my favorite artists of all time. I was standing so close to the stage that every time the bass went, I felt it go through my body. That's how close I was. And he was opening up for Susan Tedeschi and her husband, Trucks. I can't remember his first name. But I was getting sicker and sicker, and I had to leave because when I looked around, when the concert started, there was next to nobody there. And when the concert ended, it was full, and I just couldn't handle it, so I had to leave. Um,
Yeah, I had a real bad thing of that for a long time, where slightly different, but I had, after my dad died, I couldn't really be in big rooms. I
mhm.
would just start having like a total panic attack. And again, that was another one, EMDR and therapy got me through that, but I get that. It's tough.
So I didn't get to see those two perform because,
Right.
like I said, her cover of Angel from Montgomery from the 90s, I still listen to because she did such a great job. But we used to play that song too with the veterans group when I performed.
Yeah, there's something about like, that's one of those covers, isn't it, where someone gets it, right? She really gets that song, and it
Yep.
like that version of that song is unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
Just amazing artists. Um, well, that's about all I have the questions for you. But what I'd asked you before was if you would I'm going to include your song Hard Times after this interview. And I was wondering if you could tell me what the song was about, what the inspiration was. To me, I felt like it was about lockdown. To me, that
It
was,
was. It
oh,
was.
well, that's what I
Yeah.
took away from it. So
Yeah.
if you could
That's cool.
explain that song for me and then just do an introduction to it. and
Sure,
we'll be
yeah.
watching it.
Well, it's good to hear that you picked up on that. It's from a record called Hope Park, which I made during lockdown. And my lockdown was spent half the time. So my daughter Rosa would be with her mum half the time, with me half the time. So during lockdown, it was wild because it was just the city was dead, but there was ice and snow everywhere. And all I was doing was like looking after Rosa in the house or then taking her out to the park and she'd be like, I'm cold. And then we go home. And she was 3 at the time. So it was tough. It was like a really tough time to be a parent alone with a little kid. And so that was a lot of my experience of that time. But I think the thing which comes to mind about the song or the writing of the song was I was living in a basement flat and I just remember this bird that would come and fly to the tree that was next to my window and just be there. And it was like he was like one of my only friend at the time almost, you know? So I
Mm.
remember that. I remember the feeling of that and of the snow and the ice. And the song kind of came from there. And then when it came to making the video, we had a real great time because that was things had opened up by then, and we had a great time making the video. And then I reached out to uh, a writer called Irvin Welsh who wrote the book Train Spotting, which got turned
Okay,
into
yeah,
the movie Train
the movie,
Spotting.
yeah.
And he's a great supporter of the arts in Scotland, and he's just always there at any big kind of art event, anything to do with culture and music in Scotland. And I just thought, how cool would it be if we could get him to kind of like wrap up this project because it sort of was a song and then it was a film, like yourself. It was
Hmm.
like a film, and then he wrote this kind of little blurb, and so that's at the end. And I think it's I think it's one of the strongest pieces of work that I've been involved in, and the reason for that is because it was so collaborative.
Hmm.
There was so many people involved in the process. From I wrote it, but then Hutch, the engineer who I made the record with, he had such a big impact on the sound of the album, and then everyone involved in the film, and then Irvin writing us a post space and performing it, and so it just feels like a real. I'm real proud of it as a kind of a piece of art that represents that time and hopefully tells a bit of the story of what was going on at that time.
That valley, we call it a valley. What do you call it in Scotland?
Yeah, Glen, I guess, or
Glen,
like
Glen,
you'd call it a valley as well.
Glencoe?
Could be a Glen.
Was that,
Glencoe.
that's Glencoe where that
That's
was?
Glencoe. Yeah, yeah.
That's stunning. I think, was that in Outlander? Was that?
No doubt. I've no doubt. I mean, it's been in so many films, James Bond and like Skyfall,
Yeah,
so many films. But I mean, if you ever get a chance,
beautiful.
Chris, to drive through that Glen, it's there's nothing like it.
It just in the video, it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the video is stunning. It really is. It's just it's I can't even explain how much I like it. It's just amazing.
Well, Tommy, the filmmaker, he's a great guy, and we grew up together, and he's one of the only friends that I've got from back in the day that we've stayed friends, and his other work's amazing too. So definitely check out all his stuff, and he, yeah, he did a great job of it. So hopefully you'll enjoy watching it.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be in this interview. I really hope that this helps you with more people joining your Patreon and all those kind of things. And how about you throw it away to watch that video?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me on and for your openness and for the work that you're doing and yeah, just respect for the life that you've lived and how you're choosing to turn something difficult into something meaningful that can help people. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm just going to stop the recording.